So, this is going to be a video on sleep, and specifically 3 questions. So the first is, why do we sleep? The second is, what happens when we sleep? And the third will be, what makes us sleepy? So, first off, why do we sleep? Now, in sleep science, there is a theory, or a way to test theories, known as the shutdown test, and it's very simple. Just asks, why surrender yourself to the void for 8 freaking hours? How could that ever be a good idea? If you're on the plains of Africa, just being there for 8 hours, just doing nothing, seems like a total waste. So as an answer to this, there's basically a few theories. The first one is energy conservation. The other is recovery. Now, the problem with the energy one is that basically you might save, say, 500 calories or something with sleep. The thing is, like, still 8 hours. You could just eat another apple or find a bit more food. It's not a huge boon there. And in terms of recovery, there's not a specific reason your body can't do a lot of that while awake. Maybe you can do it more effectively while asleep, but is it really worth 8 hours just for that? So it turns out that the one thing you can't do when you're awake is memory stuff. So if you're awake and you try to go do memory stuff, you just can't really, because your brain is on and it's conscious and it just does not like doing stuff while it's awake. So as a result, the main thing that happens during sleep is just memory stuff. Now, in terms of what happens for that memory stuff, so during sleep, we've got a few things that go on. Now, the primary one is a very fancy memory consolidation. And what memory consolidation is moving stuff from short-term memory to long-term memory. So during the day, you're going around doing a bunch of stuff and your brain fills up and it's like, oh man, this is all in short-term memory. How are we gonna keep using this? And it's like, all right, let's go to sleep and move that all to long-term memory. That's the main thing that happens. So if you're a SuperROM user, there's a lot of data from Woz looking at the correlations between sleep data and then recall during the day. And generally, sleep is a very important part of that, because you don't get enough sleep, you don't get the chance to do memory consolidation. You're going to be damaging the movement here of the stuff that you learned during the day, and they'll just sort of get lost. Now, the second thing that happens is memory assimilation. Now, you can go a bit more precise than memory assimilation. There's like a few things within this, but the way I look at it, like I think it's pretty simple. Like basically, let's say you've got a bunch of stuff, a few dots, right? And then you have this is your existing brain, and let's say that you add in a new dot today. Now, what your brain's doing during sleep is it's connecting these crazy wacky dots into new patterns first off, but it's also integrating these new dots into existing information. So it does a lot of fancy stuff here around building memory coherence, so how connected this stuff in your head is. And one thing that I think is really wacky, and though this is still roughly theory, but I think it's really interesting, is that to some extent your brain likes to experiment with, say, stuff you've learned during the day while you're asleep, and that's partially what dreams are. Playing around with things when it's safe by simulating them. And when it does those simulations, it builds up new, say, ideas, new connections. And that's why a lot of times it's a lot easier to do a bunch of stuff during the day than to sleep. And then the next day you have all these new ideas, even though you did all the main work yesterday. It's because your brain is doing crazy, wacky stuff during sleep. So these are the main things that sort of happen. And if you don't get enough sleep, then you're definitely screwing this memory consolidation. You're screwing your recall, long-term recall, but you're also screwing, I would say, creativity, I think, how usable the stuff you've learned during the day is. So if you're anyone that does a lot of learning, you want to do these. Now, there's a lot of other stuff that happens in sleep I'm just not covering at all. Like, sleep is a complicated process, and I'm focusing on the specific memory aspect. There's stuff that, say, happens with recovery or hormones or like all kinds of things. So don't assume that this is it, and that if you don't care about learning, that it's just not useful for you. There's lots of other stuff. So this is just the main thing. Now, next question is sort of what makes us sleepy? And I think this is the one that I find the most useful. So what makes us sleepy? Oh, you can't see that. And I think that there's a pretty useful model for what makes us sleepy that can significantly help if you have sleep issues. So first off, there is the circadian component of sleep, and most people already sort of know this. If you don't, which is fine, it's basically like a clock, and it goes in 24-ish 24-hour-ish cycles. It's actually a little bit longer than 24 hours, so I'll get to that a bit later. But basically, it's cyclical sleepiness. So basically, it's what makes you feel sleepy usually around the same time each day. So like, let's say that you go to bed around 11. So this is the thing that makes it so that you feel sleepy around that time. Now, a lot of people in the modern era have issues with the circadian component because it's completely out of whack because of, say, excessive use of sunlight, not enough exercise, just vastly different lifestyles than our ancestors lived. So I'll get into how you can fix that a bit later. Now, the second thing that makes us sleepy is the homeostatic component. Now, this one might seem complicated, but I think it's pretty simple. Now, all it is that as you go throughout the day, your brain acquires memories, and as it acquires memories, it's like, all right, we have too many memories. And at some point, like, as that happens, as you have more and more stuff that your brain wants to do memory consolidation on, then your brain just makes you sleepier. So basically, homeostatic component is just a pressure to do memory consolidation, to go to sleep, and to offload the pressure from your short-term memory and to transfer stuff to long-term memory. So basically, the way this works in practice is that as the day goes on, you get more tired, which is pretty simple. But I think it's important to realize that this and this are separate. That you're not just feeling sleepy because it's just the time of day. You're feeling sleepy because of time of day, but also because as you go on, your brain just like wants to sleep. That there's like a growing pressure that happens as time goes on that slowly increases. So now, if you want to have good sleep, then you sort of need to combine circadian component and the homeostatic component. And if you only have one or the other, then it's just not going to be great. So for example, let's say that it's 8 a.m. and you pulled an all-nighter. You have plenty of homeostatic component, but you have no circadian. Now, what can happen in that case is that basically these processes release hormones, and you need those hormones to get the right stages of sleep. So if you try to sleep without one of them, then it's very likely that you're just not going to be able to get the right quality of sleep. So it's really important to sleep when both are high and not just when one is high. Now, if I draw us a simple graph, now the vertical axis is sleepiness, and then this x-axis is time of day, then the circadian component is going to look something like this. So let's say that this is midnight, and then this is noon. Now you're going to have like peak sleepiness somewhere around here, and then around, say, I don't know, 7, it'll like drop and it'll get to its lowest, and then it'll be fine, and then it'll slowly increase around 12, and then it'll drop, and then it'll increase again as we get to the next midnight. So I guess a better way to write this would be 24 and 0. But you can see that first off, we have the peak obviously at night, but we also have a second peak a lot of people sort of miss out on. So actually this is a little bit inaccurate. This should be closer to like, well, if we wake up at 7, it should be around, say, 2 maybe. You have this circadian sleepiness that comes around noon, or not noon, like siesta time, I would say. So yeah, around 7 to 8 hours from waking usually. So generally then we also have the homeostatic component. So it's sort of like as you sleep, just like goes down. And then, now let's say you don't take a nap. Then what happens to the homeostatic is it just keeps going up until you like sleep, and then it goes down. But as you get more homeostatically sleepy, your cognition is just going to sort of drop over time, right? So what sort of happens then is that your brain naturally humans are biphasic. They're meant to sleep twice a day. And the reason for that is that basically if you just take a quick nap, so let's say, I don't know, it varies. Like for me, I usually take naps at around 1 or 2 hours because I'm usually pretty sleep deprived. But for most people, let's say that you take like half hour to an hour nap, then basically just offloads a bunch of this pressure. It's not like that you're going to start back at 0, but then it's like a lot better. Then the second half of the day ends up being much easier when you take another sleep episode. So what was well, if you know Woz, the guy that made Super something he says which I find really crazy is that he can only get 60% done of what he might otherwise be able to in the evening when he doesn't take a nap. And I find it roughly true for me as well. Like if I don't take a nap, I'm just sort of dead, and it's like much harder to get things done, especially when I'm really sleep deprived. So I strongly recommend that people try taking naps. So this is about it for this first video, and I'm hoping to make another one maybe on like what happens if you have circadian homeostatic misalignment and the hour that you feel sleepy at is like later than you want. But if you have any questions about this one or comments, or you just think it was terrible or you think it was great, you have feedback, I am very welcome to all of it. So thanks for watching.